prostitute murdered. And I immediately, we did an action alert. I actually contacted New Haven Register, and I actually talked to the reporter that day. And like I said to him, I said, one is, what does the fact that the person's transgender or that they're a sex worker have to do with the fact that they were murdered? And then they went on and they really talked about it in a derogatory way. But it was interesting. Later on that day, I actually got calls from the news stations who were reporting on it, asking, how can we talk about this?
Yeah.
What is the right way? And things like you're doing here is very important. People are uncomfortable. Even now, it's just like anybody who's different. You know,
absolutely.
You meet someone who's different, and we're always uncomfortable. And that's just human nature. There's nothing wrong with that. But once we get to know the person, it's like that all just dissolves away.
Yeah, there was an incident recently up your way, up in Putnam, where the guy came out of the bar, right, and he died.
Yeah, exactly.
And this was a person who was cross-dressed, known to cross-dress in the area, and there was apparently no foul play or anything. He had gotten out of the hospital and. Something happened. I don't know.
This was from the Danielson area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was very interesting to see how different news sources in the area reported it. And I have to say, I was really happy. I think it was the Norwich Bulletin listed, this name, this age, died from what the police. It was very factual. And there were several sources, however, I was dismayed to say, that ran headlines of, cross-dresser dies.
Exactly.
And it's like,
it's putting a label on it, which...
Well, and as J. Marie pointed out, there was no relevance in this case to the person being a cross-dresser and their death. If there was something that led the police to believe, and there wasn't, that it may have been a motivated crime, then perhaps the information becomes relevant. But,
they automatically get that.
It's the sensational headline that'll get you clicks.
And there was a case, too, that it was a teacher who was a cross-dresser. And this was many years ago, and he was arrested, and he might have been drunk driving, so, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
But he was dressed. And the next day, the papers had cross-dressing teacher arrested.
Right.
And they ended up being so negative, the man eventually committed suicide.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it is. And this is the thing is that, this is,
That's very sad.
It is.
Very sad.
We need to be a humanistic society, and understand it. I mean, who of us wants to wake up tomorrow and everybody look like us?
Right.
Everybody be the same. The beauty of the world is the diversity.
Sure, absolutely. And that's a lot of what we're about, is just because we found that to be so true, that if we can get out there and just talk to people,
meet
people, we change their minds.
We have found in doing the panel discussions in the schools, the students come in with one type of way of thinking, and by the time they leave, it's completely different.
It's hard. It's hard to just sort of generally hate somebody once you actually get to know them.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
And it's been very, very useful.
Yeah. And it's important, and it takes a lot of bravery because it is hard to do that, and that's,
Yeah, it feels so good though.
It
really does, and so we kind of enjoy that aspect of this.
It makes a big difference.
It does, and I'm sure, because this happens across the board, that there are people who saw the show or saw you and said, this is what I am, and people can do it, and they're actually on TV.
Yeah.
And they start to sort of make those steps.
Yeah.
And that's what it is, and then it's one touches one, and
Renee came to us because she saw us on the show.
Oh my God, that's beautiful.
Exactly. That's how I.
Yeah.
At the very beginning, I didn't know which way to turn, who to turn to, and this group was a lifesaver to me. I mean,
it's a beautiful story.
It's been great.
But we've also had some interesting callers that have followed us over the last couple years, who you can sort of tell when they call in periodically and you're talking to them, you start to recognize them, and their questions start to change over time. There's a sort of an understanding and a recognition that their attitudes might be shifting a little. The fear and the stigma might be going away.
Sure. I know that. I mean, I've seen in the workshops I've done in college classrooms and at churches, I've seen opinion and state of mind and understanding shift in like an hour and a half period.
Yeah.
You know, just from talking about things like human being to human being, like let's talk about experiences people have and like why it's not okay to discriminate or why it's not okay to pigeonhole people. And really like having people, you know, maybe they're not going to show up at the Capitol the next day, you know, with their fist in the air, but maybe they'll write a letter, or, you know, maybe they'll respond to an email, maybe they'll open an email, and, you know, maybe they'll turn to a friend and say, you know, you can't speak like that in front of me, or whatever it is. But, you know, seeing year-to-year changes in communities is great, but seeing like an hour-to-hour change is amazing.
Yeah.
It really is very cool. I did want to ask you, as far as the legislation goes, I know that that in the past there was an issue as far as teachers exemptions for taking teachers, not including teachers in the anti-discrimination bill, and which just, of course, is horrible. It doesn't make any sense, but there were a lot of people out there that pushed for that, and I'm assuming that the new bill will not have any kind of an exclusion.
Yeah, we can talk to that a bit. Do you want to talk first?
I'll let you take that one.
One thing is, we can mitigate to the teacher issue. The people who are raising that issue, well, they can do another issue.
Yeah.
One of the things that always happens, and you see this in debates or anything else, get you focused on a topic, and then you put all your resources on that. But it's just a facade. And that's really the reality here. And when we testify, we get asked the same questions and things. Well, you know, how can a teacher be, you know, a trans person? Well, how can a teacher be a disabled person? How can a teacher? I remember when I was growing up, I had an epileptic friend who was not allowed to go to school because she was epileptic. It was considered a disability that you could not be, you could not be in the system.
Right.
And we've changed that. We've grown a lot. And there's this belief that, well, you know, that we are sort of perverts or things like that, which is just basically focusing on stereotypes.
Yeah.
I mean, the reality, you know, Consax has testified for us and talked to where sexual assault comes from, things like that. It is basically a canard. And the reality is that we've had a lot of trans people who are teachers. And they have all been good teachers. We had a person who was back in, 10 years ago, I think, who was a teacher in the greater Hartford area, came out or was outed and ended up losing their job. Yeah. And the students came and advocated on behalf of the teacher. Yeah. And the students don't come with the biases. You know, right. They accept it. No Dumb Questions is a beautiful video. We should have all the legislators who ask that question watch No Dumb Questions, because it's about 3 people talking about their aunt, who's a trans woman. Mm-hmm. And children get it. But the key thing is, it's the adults, and I truly believe it's an issue. It's a valid question to ask. Yep. In the respect of, you know, for people who don't understand. But it basically is also coming out of bigotry in many respects, because what does it have to do with your ability to teach? I mean, are we then going to say people with certain political views cannot teach? We're going to go back into the McCarthy era. Yeah. Where do you draw those lines? And so it is not an easy one to sort of, you know, you really have to work on sort of one-on-one with legislators to have, because everybody hears this and they worry about it. And if you're not in the community or understand the issue, you know, and that's why it's important for us to have trans people meet with the legislators, to have them recognize, to get away from all the stereotypes. Because if you don't meet someone who's different, you don't ever deal with a person who's blind, you have all these stereotypes. Mm-hmm. But once you start to interact with that person, you understand that. And so I understand where people come from in that space, but it's an important opportunity for education. Yeah. And the other thing is, we have had those. We will not pass a bill that has that in that, because we cannot accept that. The reality is, and most legislators will not support a bill. We had on some legislation that being attached, and it never passed. It does not pass, because when people come to vote on that, what legislators are saying is, we are saying, therefore, we can decide what the moral boundaries are for teachers. And once they go onto that slippery slope of saying that, what's the next step? Yeah. Like I said, is it political opinions? Is it religious opinions? And so when legislators go into space, they think of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you